The Nephilim, enigmatic figures mentioned in the Bible, have fascinated scholars and curious minds for centuries. But what does the Bible say about these creatures who, according to the book of Genesis, existed on earth in ancient times? Describing the Nephilim is not a simple task, as it involves not only understanding ancient texts, but also interpreting the historical and cultural contexts that shaped the view of these mysterious beings. In exploring what the Bible says about the Nephilim, we encounter a world where the divine and human intertwine in surprising ways. The concept of the Nephilim is introduced in Genesis, where they are described as the heroes of old, men of renown. These beings emerge in a context where humanity was beginning to multiply on earth, and where, according to the scriptures, the sons of God took the daughters of men, producing a race of giants. What the Bible says about these events challenges modern understanding and raises intriguing questions. Who were these sons of God? And why did this union result in such a different offspring? As a curiosity, it's worth remembering the story of Goliath, the giant defeated by David with a single stone. Goliath, although not explicitly called a Nephilim, is often associated with this lineage of giants. What the Bible says about Goliath and other giants may offer clues about the fate of these creatures and their impact on biblical history. These accounts, far from being mere legends, bring profound lessons about power, pride, and divine intervention at critical moments in human history. And it is precisely this intertwining of myths and realities that makes the investigation of the Nephilim so fascinating. The Nephilim, mentioned in Genesis 6, are described as the offspring of an unusual union between the sons of God and the daughters of men. But what does the Bible say about this peculiar origin? The passage suggests that these giants arose in an era where evil was spreading across the earth, and where humanity, in its corruption, attracted divine wrath. The Nephilim, therefore, were not only physically imposing, they represented a symbol of the moral decay that preceded the flood. The term Nephilim in Hebrew is shrouded in mystery, with interpretations ranging from fallen ones to giants. This name alone raises questions. Were they fallen angels or simply humans of unusual stature? What the Bible says about the meaning of this name leads us to reflections on the nature of these beings, who stood out not only for their size but also for their actions, described as violent and oppressive. These characteristics reinforce the image of the Nephilim as antagonists in a narrative where good and evil are in constant conflict. In biblical tradition, the Nephilim are portrayed as beings of immense power and cruelty. What the Bible says about their actions suggests that they dominated the earth, spreading terror and wickedness wherever they went. These giants were not merely large in stature. They were large in influence and impact, shaping the destiny of humanity in that era. Considering these characteristics, we can better understand why they are seen as such feared and, at the same time, fascinating figures. But as we delve deeper, we realize that this is just one part of the story. When it comes to the Nephilim, the most widely discussed theory is that of fallen angels. According to this view, what the Bible says about the Nephilim is that they were direct descendants of angels who rebelled against God and, upon taking human form, united with mortal women. This union between the divine and the earthly resulted in powerful and corrupt beings who, according to this interpretation, embodied the degradation of humanity. The presence of these giants on earth was seen as such a severe deviation from the natural order that it ultimately led to divine judgment through the flood. On the other hand, there is the theory that proposes that the Nephilim were not descendants of angels but rather of the sons of Seth, the third son of Adam and Eve. What the Bible says about this lineage is that they remained faithful to God, unlike the descendants of Cain, who strayed from divine will. The union between the sons of Seth and the daughters of Cain would have produced the Nephilim, a race of giants symbolizing the mixture of the sacred and the profane. This view suggests that the Nephilim were a physical manifestation of the spiritual conflict between two human lineages, one faithful and the other rebellious. Comparing these two theories leads us to deep reflection on the theological implications of each. If the Nephilim were indeed descendants of fallen angels, what does this tell us about the interaction between the celestial and the earthly? And if they were merely extraordinary humans, how does this change our interpretation of biblical texts? What the Bible says about these possibilities challenges our understanding and invites us to consider the role of these giants in the larger narrative of humanity. In any case, both theories agree on one point. The Nephilim were not ordinary beings, and their presence on Earth marked a period of great turmoil and change. The fate of the Nephilim is as intriguing as their origin. According to what the Bible says about these giants, Noah's flood was the event that brought their end. The earth, corrupted by wickedness and violence, was purified by the waters, eliminating both humans and the Nephilim, who, in their cruelty, had become symbols of everything that was wrong in that world. The flood was not just a physical cleansing but also a spiritual one, removing from the face of the earth those who, according to the scriptures, had irreversibly strayed from God's path. However, even after the flood, what the Bible says about the Nephilim suggests that the presence of giants on earth was not completely eradicated. Later accounts mention figures like the descendants of Anak, whom the Israelite spies encountered in the land of Canaan. These giants, though not explicitly called Nephilim, provoked fear and admiration, reinforcing the idea that these beings or their influence persisted in some way. The story of Goliath, for instance, is a vivid reminder that giants continued to play a significant role in the biblical narrative, even after the purification brought by the flood. This persistence of giants raises questions about the nature of evil and how it can resurface even after being seemingly eradicated. What the Bible says about these giants who survived or reappeared invites us to reflect on the resilience of forces that challenge divine order. Were these beings truly survivors of the ancient world, or were they manifestations of a new cycle of corruption? In any case, the biblical narrative makes it clear that while evil may be contained, it is never entirely defeated, requiring constant vigilance from the faithful. Today, what the Bible says about the Nephilim continues to be the subject of intense debate among theologians and scholars. Interpretations vary widely, with some maintaining that these giants were literally the offspring of fallen angels, while others see this narrative as a metaphor for the moral and spiritual corruption that overtook humanity at that time. The main question dividing opinions is whether the Nephilim were physical beings or symbolic representations of an era of decay. This is a clear example of how scriptures can be interpreted in very different ways depending on the context and theological perspective adopted. The implications of these different interpretations are profound for the Christian faith. If we accept that the Nephilim were indeed descendants of fallen angels, this opens the door to an understanding of evil that goes beyond the human, involving supernatural beings in a cosmic conflict that still influences the earth today. On the other hand, if the Nephilim are seen as an allegory, what the Bible says about them can be understood as a warning about the dangers of straying from God and the temptation to mix the sacred with the profane. Both perspectives offer valuable insights but also challenge the way we understand sacred history. These modern theological debates are more than academic discussions. They directly impact how Christians practice their faith and interpret the scriptures. The way one understands the Nephilim can influence the view of the nature of evil, the need for spiritual vigilance, and even the interpretation of current events in light of biblical prophecies. What the Bible says about the Nephilim, therefore, is not just a matter of ancient history but a window into eternal questions that continue to resonate in the heart of the Christian faith. When considering what the Bible says about the Nephilim, it is impossible not to reflect on the spiritual and moral significance of these mysterious beings. They remind us that in every age, humanity faces challenges that go beyond the physical, touching the depths of the spiritual. What these giants represent in terms of temptation, corruption, and straying from God is a lesson that remains relevant today. What the Bible says about this dark era leads us to ponder how we, in our own lives, face forces that divert us from the right path. In this sense, an intriguing question arises: could the Nephilim, or what they symbolize, still exist in some form today? Could these forces still be present, trying to corrupt and distort humanity? We invite you to reflect on this and consider how these ancient stories may have relevance in your daily life. How do you react to modern temptations that seek to lead you away from your spiritual purpose? What does the Bible say about how we should protect ourselves from these influences? So, what do you think? Are the Nephilim just an ancient story, or do they still have something to teach us about the battle between good and evil? Leave your reflections and theories in the comments. Could these forces that, according to what the Bible says about the Nephilim, existed in the past be present today in a more subtle way? And how can we, in our daily lives, recognize and resist these influences? The discussion is open, and we want to hear what you have to say. Throughout this video, we've explored what the Bible says about the Nephilim and the various theological interpretations surrounding these enigmatic figures. We've